It was a bright, bustling Saturday afternoon in the city, and the streets were filled with people moving from store to store, enjoying the weekend energy. The boutique sat on a corner of a busy avenue, its glass windows shining in the sunlight, displaying the latest fashion pieces, each one carefully arranged to catch the eye. Inside, soft music played, and the air smelled faintly of new leather and perfume. The boutique had a reputation for high-end products and attentive service, and it attracted customers who loved feeling special and unique. The manager, a woman, in her early 40s, moved quickly around the boutique, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. She was someone used to authority, always keeping a sharp eye on the staff and customers alike. Her presence was commanding, and she had built a reputation for being strict but fair, or at least she believed so. She took pride in her ability to handle situations, and in her mind she always knew what was best for the boutique and its image. That afternoon, a young woman walked into the boutique. She was in her early 20s, stylishly dressed and carried herself with confidence. There was a sense of calm about her, but her presence was noticeable. She moved gracefully through the racks, touching the fabric gently, examining the patterns and textures. She appreciated quality and style, and it was clear she knew what she liked. The manager noticed her immediately. She observed the young woman with a mixture of curiosity and caution, her instincts telling her to stay alert. There was something different about this customer, something that demanded attention, but in her experience she believed she could handle any situation and ensure the boutique ran smoothly. The young woman approached a display of dresses. Her eyes lingered on a particularly elegant piece, and she reached out to examine it. At the same time, the manager was walking nearby, ensuring that nothing was disturbed or damaged. Their paths crossed, and the manager, in her usual assertive tone, spoke up. "Excuse me, miss, you need to be careful with that. It's very delicate." The manager's voice carried authority, but also a hint of impatience. She believed she was doing the right thing, protecting the boutique's merchandise. The young woman looked up, her expression calm but slightly surprised. "I'm just looking, thank you. I know how to handle these things." Her voice was steady, polite, but firm. She didn't want trouble, just to browse and enjoy the shopping experience. The manager's eyes narrowed slightly. She wasn't used to customers speaking back in this way. She took a step closer, lowering her voice so only the young woman could hear. "I understand, but accidents happen. We can't take risks here. Please be more careful." There was a tension in her words, an undercurrent of authority that suggested she expected immediate compliance. The young woman smiled gently, trying to ease the tension. "I promise I will be careful." She continued to look at the dress, turning it slightly to see the detail on the fabric. She wanted to move past this moment, to enjoy her shopping without conflict. But the manager's mind was already in overdrive. She had seen enough situations escalate, and in her mind, she was preparing for the worst. She didn't fully realize that her actions were about to cross a line, that the way she reacted could change the course of the afternoon entirely. As the young woman reached for another dress, the manager stepped closer again, this time placing a hand on the display to guide her away slightly. No, don't touch that one. It's not for handling right now." There was a firmness in her voice that suggested the situation was becoming more serious. The young woman turned to face her, her eyes meeting the manager's. "I'm not doing anything wrong, I just want to see the dress." There was a calmness in her voice, but also a hint of frustration. She didn't understand why the manager was being so aggressive over something so small. In that moment, something inside the manager snapped. She felt her authority being challenged, her control over the boutique slipping. Without thinking fully, she reached out, her hand making contact with the young woman in a way that was sudden and forceful. The young woman stumbled slightly, shock flashing across her face. The boutique fell silent for a heartbeat, the music and chatter fading as everyone realized something had just happened. The young woman steadied herself, her heart racing. She hadn't expected this. She was hurt, physically and emotionally, but she refused to show panic or fear. Around them, staff and customers were frozen, unsure how to react. Some whispered to each other, while others reached for their phones, capturing the moment that had just unfolded. The manager stepped back, a flash of regret crossing her face, quickly replaced by defensiveness. "I didn't mean to," she started, but her words faltered. She was used to being in control, and now she was suddenly unsure, facing a situation she had not anticipated. Her mind raced with possible ways to fix it, but the damage had already been done. The young woman took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She didn't want to make the situation worse, but she knew she couldn't just let it go without standing her ground. She looked around, noticing the eyes of bystanders, the whispers, the phones pointed in her direction. She realized that this moment had escalated beyond a simple disagreement. "It's okay," she said softly, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "I'm going to be fine. Let's just move on." She didn't raise her voice, didn't shout, but her calmness carried a quiet strength that seemed to ripple through the boutique. The manager nodded, trying to regain composure, but inside, a storm was brewing. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had gone too far, that she had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. She looked at the young woman, who was now walking toward the exit, graceful despite the incident. Her pride was evident, and there was a dignity in her movements that left the manager feeling small and exposed. Outside the boutique, the young woman paused for a moment, taking a deep breath of the city air. She could hear the distant hum of traffic, the chatter of pedestrians, and the faint music drifting from nearby stores. She felt a mixture of emotions: anger, surprise, but also determination. She wasn't going to let this define her or her day. She had handled herself with poise, and now she would handle what came next with careful thought. Inside, the boutique was in a state of quiet chaos. Staff whispered among themselves, trying to process what had happened. The manager retreated to her office for a moment, leaning against her desk, closing her eyes. She replayed the incident over and over in her mind, feeling the weight of her actions pressing down. She had always prided herself on knowing how to handle people, but this time she had lost control in the worst way possible. The young woman's exit was calm, but it carried a sense of purpose. She knew that the incident would not end here, that there were steps to take, decisions to make, but she also knew she had the strength to face whatever came next. She walked down the street, blending into the crowd, her mind clear and focused despite the shock of the moment. Back in the boutique, the manager finally allowed herself to feel the full impact of what had happened. Her pride, her sense of authority, her carefully constructed image, all of it felt fragile now. She realized that a single impulsive action had the potential to undo her reputation and create consequences far beyond what she had imagined. The scene outside the boutique continued as normal, people moving along, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded moments ago. But inside, the boutique had changed. The energy was different, charged with tension, regret, and uncertainty. The manager knew that she would have to face what was coming, but at that moment all she could do was sit quietly, hoping that somehow the situation could be contained. The young woman continued her walk, her thoughts shifting to the next steps. She had family, resources, and support, but she also had a clear sense of justice and self-respect. She knew she needed to handle this wisely, with strength and intelligence, ensuring that her voice was heard and that accountability was addressed. As she disappeared into the city crowd, the boutique manager remained behind, staring at the empty space where the young woman had been. She knew this was only the beginning of a chain of events that she could not control. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting patterns on the floor, a silent reminder that the world outside continued, indifferent to the small but significant drama that had just played out within the boutique walls. And so the day went on, but nothing would ever be quite the same again. Both the young woman and the boutique manager were changed, marked by a single impulsive act that would ripple far beyond that moment, setting the stage for events neither of them could fully predict. The young woman walked down the busy street, trying to calm her racing heart. The sounds of the city surrounded her, the hum of traffic, the chatter of people, the occasional laughter from a nearby cafe. It was the kind of afternoon that usually felt light and carefree, but for her the energy was heavy. She kept replaying the incident in the boutique, the manager's hand, the sudden shock and the quiet tension that had followed. She had handled it with composure, but the memory still made her pulse quicken. She found a quiet corner by a small park and leaned against a lamppost, taking deep breaths. She reminded herself that she wasn't alone, that she had a plan and the support she could call on. She sent a quick message to her father, careful with her words but clear about what had happened. She didn't want to overreact, but she knew this wasn't something to ignore. Her father was someone who taught her to stand up for herself, to approach situations wisely, and to make sure she was safe while handling things responsibly. Meanwhile, back at the boutique, the manager was trying to piece together what had just happened. Staff whispered nervously among themselves, some speculating about what might come next. A few had already recorded the incident on their phones, the clip circulating quietly but steadily online. The manager, pacing back and forth, felt a tight knot in her stomach. She had never expected to face this kind of scrutiny. She had always been confident in her authority, but now she was confronting the reality of her impulsive action. Customers who had witnessed the event were still murmuring among themselves. Some were sympathetic to the young woman. Others were shocked at the manager's sudden aggression. It was clear that the boutique's image was at risk, and the manager felt the weight of that pressure heavily. She wanted to apologize, to explain, but the words seemed to fail her. The tension in the boutique was palpable, like a quiet storm waiting to erupt. Outside, the young woman walked slowly through the park, her mind organizing the events of the day. She thought about how unexpected the incident had been. She had only wanted a normal shopping experience, but it had escalated quickly. She realized that she had done her best to stay calm and maintain dignity, but she also knew that there would need to be a reckoning. She wasn't someone to let things slide when boundaries had been crossed. Her father, upon receiving her message, reacted with a combination of concern and calm authority. He didn't want to create a scene or overreact publicly, but he understood the seriousness of the situation. He advised her to stay safe, gather her thoughts, and wait for the right moment. He also reassured her that she had handled herself well, and that he would help her ensure accountability without unnecessary drama. As the afternoon wore on, the boutique continued to feel the ripple effects. Staff were trying to maintain normal operations, but every small sound seemed amplified. Every movement watched. The manager's confidence was shaken, replaced by anxiety and regret. She kept glancing at her phone, worried that the video of the incident might appear online in a way that could damage the boutique's reputation permanently. The young woman, meanwhile, returned home, taking a cab to ensure she wasn't followed or further harassed. She needed time to think, to process, and to decide on the next steps. She sat down, still feeling the lingering sting of the manager's aggression, but also feeling a sense of resolve. She knew that this experience was not just about her, but about standing up against behavior that was unacceptable in any context. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends who had seen clips of the incident online. Some offered support, others expressed shock, and a few wondered aloud if the situation would escalate further. She responded calmly, explaining that she was safe and that her father was aware. She didn't want to fan the flames unnecessarily, but she also wanted to make it clear that accountability was important. Inside the boutique, the manager was making calls. She spoke with higher-ups, trying to explain her side of the story, but her explanations felt weak even to herself. She realized that the incident had escalated beyond a simple misunderstanding. The young woman's composure and dignity contrasted sharply with her own impulsive actions, leaving her feeling vulnerable and exposed. Word of the incident began to spread, quietly at first. Local news outlets picked up on the story as witnesses shared clips online. The boutique manager watched in disbelief as the situation started to attract attention. She hadn't anticipated the far-reaching consequences of a single impulsive act. Her anxiety grew with every passing hour, knowing that she would have to face the young woman again and possibly her father. The young woman, aware of the growing attention, remained calm. She didn't want to be drawn into unnecessary conflict or media frenzy. She focused on her family's advice, keeping her dignity intact and planning the steps to handle the boutique manager. She knew that the right approach would be measured, ensuring accountability while maintaining control over the situation. That evening, she reflected on the events of the day. She thought about how easily small conflicts could escalate when people acted without thinking. She considered how many others might experience similar situations and how important it was to remain calm, composed, and assertive. She realized that her reaction had set an example, not only for herself but potentially for others who might face disrespect or aggression in public spaces. Back at the boutique, the manager was left to contemplate the day's events alone. Staff had gone home, customers had left, and the silence of the evening brought a harsh clarity. She realized that her actions had consequences far beyond the boutique walls. She had underestimated the young woman, overestimated her own control, and allowed her impulses to dictate behavior that should have been restrained. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her. Meanwhile, the young woman prepared for the next day, knowing that she would need to make contact with her father and decide on a plan to address the incident. She considered the best way to approach the situation, with calm, authority, and focus, ensuring that justice was served without unnecessary confrontation. She reviewed her thoughts carefully, knowing that one misstep could escalate the situation further. As night fell, the city lights flickered on, illuminating the streets with a warm glow. The young woman sat by her window, reflecting on the events and mentally preparing for what was to come. She was hurt, yes, but she was also resolute. She knew that standing up for herself and maintaining dignity would make all the difference in how the situation ultimately resolved. In the boutique, the manager stayed late, trying to organize herself. She looked at the now quiet space, the racks of clothing and the pristine displays, and felt the emptiness that the incident had left behind. She understood that she would have to face difficult conversations, possible consequences, and the judgment of those who had witnessed or heard about the event. It was a sobering realization, one that left her reflecting deeply on her actions. The next morning, the young woman made her first steps toward resolution. She contacted her father again, discussing the details, and together they began to form a plan. It was clear that she would need support, guidance, and strategy to ensure the boutique manager understood the severity of her actions. But the young woman felt confident in her ability to face the challenge with composure and determination. The boutique manager, unaware of the young woman's connections and influence, prepared for what she hoped would be a manageable resolution. She thought of apologizing, of repairing damage, but she didn't yet know the full story. The tension in the boutique, the uncertainty of the young woman's next move, created an atmosphere of suspense and unease that could not be ignored. Throughout the day, the young woman stayed composed, navigating the reactions of friends, family, and acquaintances who had seen the incident online. She remained measured, calm, and focused, a stark contrast to the boutique manager's anxious state. Her demeanor reflected strength, patience, and an understanding that handling conflict wisely often required self-control and strategic thinking. By evening, both the young woman and the boutique manager were preparing for the inevitable confrontation. One was calm, measured, and ready to address the situation with clarity and authority. The other was anxious, uncertain, and aware that the repercussions of a single moment could be significant and far-reaching. The stage was set for the next chapter in this story, a confrontation that would test composure, accountability, and the consequences of impulsive actions. The young woman spent the night reflecting on the incident and the steps she needed to take. She was not someone to let disrespect or aggression slide, and she knew she had to address what had happened. But she also understood the importance of timing, patience, and the right approach. Rushing could make things worse, and she wanted to handle this situation with the strength and dignity that her father had taught her to value. Early the next morning, she spoke to her father over the phone. His voice was calm, authoritative, and reassuring. He listened carefully as she explained the incident, providing guidance without panic. He emphasized the importance of staying composed, collecting evidence if needed, and ensuring that the boutique manager understood the seriousness of her actions. He reminded her that confrontation could be handled with words, calm demeanor, and intelligence rather than anger. The young woman felt a sense of relief hearing her father's voice. It reminded her that she had support, that she wasn't alone in this, and that she had the resources to make sure accountability was addressed appropriately. She could feel her resolve strengthen. This was not just about what had happened in the boutique. It was about standing up for herself and making sure that impulsive actions didn't go unchallenged. Meanwhile, the boutique manager was facing the consequences of her impulsive behavior. Staff were whispering behind her back, and the incident had started to attract attention online. Some local social media pages had clips from witnesses, and while the situation hadn't gone viral yet, there was enough chatter to make her uneasy. She felt trapped in a situation she hadn't fully prepared for. Her confidence in her authority was shaken, replaced by a gnawing fear of what was to come. The boutique manager tried to strategize, thinking of how she could apologize, explain, or somehow minimize the impact. But deep down, she knew that the young woman's presence, calm reaction, and clear dignity made any attempt at minimizing seem futile. She felt the pressure mounting, realizing that this incident would not simply fade away. She needed a plan, but the situation was already beyond her control. The young woman prepared herself, taking notes about the incident, recalling the exact words spoken, and reflecting on how the manager had behaved. She didn't intend to escalate the matter unnecessarily, but she knew documentation and clarity would help her communicate the seriousness of the incident effectively. She wanted to ensure that the manager could not claim ignorance or misinterpret the situation. Throughout the day, the young woman kept a composed exterior. She went about her normal activities, but in her mind, she was planning the steps ahead. Her father occasionally checked in, offering advice and reassurance. He encouraged her to stay calm, to maintain dignity, and to focus on addressing the incident in a way that ensured accountability without drama. The young woman understood that her father's guidance was not just about safety. It was about handling situations wisely and with confidence. Back at the boutique, the manager was growing increasingly anxious. She walked through the store, checking displays, staff, and cameras, trying to anticipate what could happen next. She had a lingering sense of unease, a feeling that the young woman was not someone to be underestimated. There was something about her composure and calm authority that suggested she was prepared to address the incident carefully but firmly. The manager felt vulnerable, unsure of how to proceed without worsening the situation. The young woman's calm and collected nature contrasted sharply with the manager's anxiety. She knew that timing and strategy would be essential, and she considered the best approach to ensure the manager understood the consequences of her actions. She didn't want to humiliate the manager unnecessarily, but she wanted accountability, respect, and acknowledgement of the harm done. As the day went on, the young woman received messages from friends who had seen the clips online. Some expressed shock, some concern, and some curiosity about what would happen next. She replied calmly, making it clear that she was safe, aware of her next steps, and had her father's guidance. She didn't want unnecessary speculation to create chaos or misrepresent the situation. Her focus remained on handling things wisely. The boutique manager, meanwhile, tried to anticipate the young woman's next move. She considered reaching out with an apology, but she was uncertain how it would be received. She felt a mix of regret and fear, knowing that the young woman's reaction could be decisive. The staff sensed the tension, moving cautiously, aware that the atmosphere in the boutique had changed significantly since the incident. As the evening approached, the young woman and her father discussed the potential approaches to confront the manager. They considered a calm meeting at the boutique, a conversation over the phone, or involving other responsible parties if necessary. Her father emphasized that the key was composure, clarity, and ensuring the manager recognized the severity of her actions. They both understood that public attention could escalate the situation, so discretion and careful planning were essential. The young woman felt a mixture of determination and calm confidence. She was prepared to face the situation with the right balance of firmness and grace. She knew that she had handled herself well during the incident, and now she would handle the aftermath with equal composure. Her father's guidance reinforced her sense of control, making her feel empowered rather than victimized. The boutique manager, on the other hand, was struggling with her anxiety. She realized that she had underestimated the young woman, misjudged the situation, and acted impulsively. She began to anticipate the possibility of a confrontation with someone who was not only poised, but had the influence and support of a prominent figure. Fear and regret combined to create a heavy sense of responsibility that she could not easily shake. The young woman made a final plan for the next day. She would approach the situation calmly, ensuring her father was aware and supportive. She wanted to maintain control, communicate clearly, and hold the manager accountable without unnecessary conflict. She understood the manager's position might be one of defensiveness, but she believed that a composed and measured approach would achieve the desired outcome. That night, as the city lights glimmered outside her window, the young woman reflected on the events. She thought about how quickly a normal day could turn into an unexpected challenge, and how composure, patience, and clear thinking could make all the difference. She felt a sense of resolve, knowing that she would navigate the situation wisely, with dignity and with support behind her. Inside the boutique, the manager stayed late, staring at the displays and the quiet space around her. She reviewed the day repeatedly in her mind, replaying the incident, the reactions, and the potential consequences. She realized that her impulsive action had created a ripple effect that she could not control alone. Fear and regret weighed heavily, and she began to understand that the next steps would determine not only her professional reputation, but also her personal integrity. The young woman's father continued to advise her calmly, emphasizing the importance of measured steps, evidence, and clarity. They discussed potential scenarios, how to respond if the manager reacted poorly, and how to ensure that accountability was achieved without escalating tension unnecessarily. The young woman appreciated his guidance, feeling more confident and prepared to face what was coming. As night deepened, both the young woman and the boutique manager were aware that the next day could be pivotal. One was calm, prepared, and guided by wisdom and support. The other was anxious, uncertain, and facing the consequences of impulsive behavior. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test composure, accountability, and understanding, marking a turning point in the story that had begun in a single impulsive moment inside a boutique. The young woman went to bed that night with a clear sense of purpose. She knew she had to be patient, focused, and ready to address the manager directly, ensuring that respect, dignity, and accountability were maintained. Her mind was calm, her heart steady, and her resolve unwavering. She understood that handling the situation wisely was not just about her own experience, but about standing up for what was right in a way that set an example for others. The boutique manager, meanwhile, lay awake with worry and regret. She knew that she had underestimated the young woman and the consequences of her actions. Anxiety filled the space where confidence once resided, and she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. She understood that the coming day would require honesty, acknowledgement, and possibly difficult conversations to rectify the situation. There was no escaping the repercussions, and she could only hope that composure, explanation, and accountability could help mitigate the outcome. The young woman's calm resolve and the manager's growing anxiety created a quiet tension that would carry into the next day. Both were preparing in their own ways, one with composure, strategy, and support, the other with fear, regret, and uncertainty. The incident had created ripples that extended far beyond the boutique, affecting emotions, reputations, and expectations. It was a reminder of how quickly an impulsive action could change the course of events and how important it was to handle conflict with care, dignity, and foresight. The city outside continued its normal rhythm, unaware of the storm brewing in two separate lives connected by a single moment. The young woman's determination and her father's guidance created a sense of calm confidence, while the boutique manager's regret and anxiety foreshadowed the inevitable confrontation. The next chapter was set to unfold, promising a test of composure, accountability, and the power of calm authority in the face of impulsive aggression. The next morning, the young woman woke up with a clear plan. She had spent the night thinking through every possible scenario and discussing them with her father. She knew that confronting the boutique manager would require a balance of calm authority and firm boundaries. Her father reminded her that confidence came not from anger, but from composure and clarity. With his guidance in mind, she prepared herself to face the boutique again. Meanwhile, the boutique manager was already at work, feeling the pressure of the previous day's incident. She walked through the boutique with an uneasy feeling, checking displays, staff, and security cameras. Her mind raced, trying to anticipate what could happen when the young woman returned. Every sound, every movement heightened her anxiety. She understood that her impulsive action had created a situation she could not control alone. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her, and she realized that she could not simply ignore the consequences. As the boutique opened for business, a sense of tension filled the air. Staff moved cautiously, trying to maintain normal operations while also being aware of the lingering incident. Customers entered, some noticing the quiet atmosphere, while others were oblivious to the previous day's events. The boutique manager tried to maintain composure, but her anxiety made her movement stiff and her instructions sharp. It was clear to everyone that the boutique had been changed by the previous day's events. The young woman arrived mid-morning, her demeanor calm, composed, and purposeful. She walked into the boutique with quiet confidence, her eyes scanning the store and meeting the manager's gaze. The manager's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the young woman. Suddenly, the situation became very real, and the manager felt the full weight of the previous day's impulsive action. The young woman approached the manager directly, her posture straight and calm. She spoke clearly, without anger but with firm authority. "Yesterday something happened here that should not have happened. I was treated unfairly, and it is important that it is addressed." Her voice was steady, controlled, and carried a quiet strength that immediately drew attention from the staff and customers nearby. The manager, flustered, struggled to find words. She wanted to apologize, to explain, to fix the situation, but her mind felt clouded by anxiety. She stammered, attempting to regain control. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was an accident, and I'm sorry." Her voice lacked conviction, betraying the fear and regret she felt inside. The young woman listened patiently, maintaining her calm presence. She didn't interrupt, didn't raise her voice, but her composure made it clear that she expected accountability. She continued, "An apology is a start, but it is also important to understand the impact of your actions. What you did was aggressive and unacceptable, and it cannot be overlooked." Her words were firm but measured, emphasizing responsibility rather than seeking revenge. The manager's face paled and she nodded slowly. She realized that she could not simply apologize and move on. The young woman's calm authority and clear articulation of the situation made the manager understand the gravity of what had happened. She had underestimated the young woman, and now she saw the consequences of her impulsive behavior, clearly reflected in the young woman's presence. Staff and customers watched silently as the confrontation unfolded. The young woman's demeanor conveyed strength without aggression, a rare combination that drew respect from those around her. The manager felt exposed, realizing that she had to fully acknowledge her actions and the harm caused. There was no room for excuses, no way to deflect responsibility. The young woman took a deep breath and continued, "It is also important to make sure this does not happen to anyone else. Staff training, awareness, and respect are key. I hope you will take the necessary steps to prevent situations like this in the future." Her words were calm, constructive, and forward-looking. She emphasized accountability not just for herself, but for the broader environment of the boutique. The manager nodded again, finally finding her voice. "You're right. I see that now. I understand the impact of my actions, and I will take steps to ensure this does not happen again. I will speak with my staff, improve our procedures, and make sure that respect and safety are prioritized." Her words carried sincerity and acknowledgement of responsibility. It was a difficult moment, but necessary for her own growth and the boutique's reputation. The young woman accepted the response, maintaining her calm, but ensuring the message was clear. "I appreciate that. Thank you for taking responsibility. It is important to learn from mistakes and make sure they are not repeated." Her voice conveyed closure but also the importance of accountability moving forward. The manager exhaled, feeling a mix of relief and humility. She realized that this confrontation, though uncomfortable, was a turning point. She understood that impulsive behavior could have far-reaching consequences, and she now had a renewed sense of responsibility. The young woman's calm authority had guided the situation toward resolution, teaching an important lesson about composure and accountability. Staff and customers observed the interaction quietly, some impressed by the young woman's strength, others by the manager's eventual acknowledgement. The boutique atmosphere began to shift slightly, tension easing as clarity and accountability replaced confusion and anxiety. The young woman's presence had not only addressed her own experience, but had also served as a subtle reminder to everyone about respect and dignity. After the discussion, the young woman continued to browse briefly, maintaining composure and calm confidence. She did not seek conflict, nor did she linger to assert dominance. Her actions were measured, demonstrating that handling difficult situations with patience and authority often carried more weight than anger or aggression. She made a subtle impression on the staff and customers, showing that respect, dignity, and accountability could be achieved through calm authority. Once she left the boutique, she took a moment outside to reflect. The incident had been addressed responsibly, and the manager had acknowledged her actions and promised change. The young woman felt a sense of closure and accomplishment, knowing that she had navigated a difficult situation with composure, guidance, and confidence. She understood that this experience would stay with her, but it also reinforced her belief in handling conflict wisely. The manager, left behind in the boutique, began implementing changes. She spoke with her staff about respect, awareness, and handling difficult situations calmly. She reflected on her own behavior, understanding that authority was not about control through aggression but about guidance, patience, and respect for others. The incident became a learning experience, highlighting the importance of accountability and thoughtful action. Outside, the city continued its usual rhythm, unaware of the confrontation and resolution that had taken place within the boutique walls. Both the young woman and the boutique manager had experienced a transformation, each learning lessons about composure, responsibility, and the impact of their actions. The boutique atmosphere slowly returned to normal, but the memory of the incident and the lessons learned would linger, shaping future interactions and decisions. The young woman, reflecting on the events, felt empowered by the experience. She had handled the situation with dignity, firmness, and clarity, standing up for herself while maintaining calm authority. She knew that this was a moment of growth, a demonstration of strength and composure that would influence her future encounters and interactions. The boutique manager, having faced the consequences of her actions, now had a clearer understanding of responsibility and accountability. The incident, while stressful and challenging, had become an opportunity for learning and growth for both individuals. It was a reminder that impulsive actions could have far-reaching consequences, and that composure, guidance, and clarity were powerful tools in navigating conflict. Both the young woman and the boutique manager carried away lessons that would shape their behavior, their understanding of respect, and their approach to difficult situations in the future. As the day ended, the young woman walked away with a sense of accomplishment and inner strength. She had faced an uncomfortable situation with wisdom, support, and calm authority, ensuring that accountability was addressed without unnecessary conflict. The boutique manager, left to reflect on her actions, began a journey toward greater awareness, understanding, and responsible behavior. The experience marked a turning point, a reminder that respect, composure, and accountability were essential in every interaction, and that handling conflict thoughtfully could lead to resolution and growth for all involved. The young woman felt a sense of relief as she walked away from the boutique. The confrontation had been handled with calm authority and dignity. She had stood up for herself, ensured accountability, and maintained her composure. It was a powerful feeling, knowing that she had navigated a difficult situation without allowing anger or fear to take control. She reflected on how important it was to stay composed, even when faced with aggression, and how patience and clarity could influence outcomes more than force or confrontation. Her father called later that afternoon, checking in to make sure she was okay. His voice was calm and reassuring, a reminder that she had support and guidance. They talked about the incident, the conversation with the boutique manager, and the lessons learned. He praised her for handling the situation with composure, emphasizing that strength often comes from patience, clear thinking, and the ability to maintain dignity even in challenging circumstances. Their discussion left her feeling empowered and grounded, confident that she had acted wisely. Meanwhile, the boutique manager continued to implement changes in her store. She held meetings with her staff, emphasizing the importance of respect, awareness, and calm conflict resolution. She discussed the incident openly, acknowledging her own impulsive behavior and the lessons learned from the young woman's calm authority. Staff responded positively, understanding that the boutique's reputation and customer trust depended on their behavior and interactions. The manager realized that one moment of aggression could have lasting consequences, and she committed to ensuring that such incidents would not happen again. As days passed, the young woman continued her routine, feeling more confident and secure. She noticed a shift in her perspective, recognizing that difficult situations were opportunities to demonstrate strength and composure. She reflected on how her calm response had influenced not only the boutique manager, but also the staff and bystanders who witnessed the incident. It reinforced her belief that handling conflict with dignity and authority could create meaningful change. The boutique slowly returned to normal, but the incident left a lasting impression on both the staff and the manager. They were more conscious of how they interacted with customers, more aware of the power dynamics at play, and more committed to maintaining a respectful environment. The manager's growth became evident in her actions, and she approached her role with renewed awareness and responsibility. The young woman's influence had extended beyond her immediate experience, leaving a positive impact on the boutique's culture. One afternoon, the young woman returned to the boutique, not to confront but to observe and see the changes firsthand. She noticed the staff's attentiveness, their respectful interactions, and the manager's calm and approachable demeanor. It was clear that the incident had been a turning point, leading to reflection, growth, and improved awareness. The young woman felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that her composed approach had contributed to this positive transformation. Her father called again, discussing the broader lessons from the incident. They talked about accountability, responsibility, and the importance of maintaining dignity in difficult situations. He emphasized that life would often present challenges, and the ability to navigate them with patience, clarity, and composure was a mark of strength. The young woman listened carefully, internalizing these lessons and reflecting on how they would guide her future interactions. The boutique manager continued to implement improvements, holding regular staff meetings, emphasizing training in conflict resolution, and fostering a culture of respect and awareness. She reflected on the incident as a critical moment of learning, understanding that impulsive actions could have far-reaching consequences. Her perspective had shifted, recognizing that authority was not about control through aggression but about guidance, patience, and respect for others. The boutique became a place where accountability and dignity were prioritized, and the young woman's influence had been a catalyst for this change. The young woman felt a renewed sense of confidence and purpose. She realized that difficult experiences could be powerful opportunities for growth, reflection, and positive influence. Her calm and composed response had not only addressed the immediate situation, but had also contributed to lasting change in the boutique. She understood that her actions could set an example for others, demonstrating that strength and authority often came from patience, clarity, and dignity. As time passed, the boutique manager's behavior continued to improve. She maintained open communication with her staff, addressed potential conflicts proactively, and fostered an environment of respect and accountability. The young woman's experience had left a lasting impression on her, shaping her approach to leadership and interaction. The lessons learned extended beyond the boutique, influencing future decisions, behavior, and relationships. The young woman reflected on the incident and its resolution, understanding that she had navigated a challenging situation with grace and intelligence. She had stood up for herself, ensured accountability, and influenced positive change, all while maintaining composure and dignity. The experience reinforced her belief in the power of calm authority, patience, and thoughtful action. Her father continued to offer guidance, reminding her that life would present challenges, but the ability to handle them with clarity, patience, and respect was a true measure of strength. She internalized these lessons, confident that she could navigate future situations with wisdom and composure. The incident, while challenging, had become a valuable experience that strengthened her understanding of responsibility, accountability, and the importance of maintaining dignity in all interactions. The boutique, now a place of improved awareness and respect, continued to operate successfully. Staff and management had learned valuable lessons, influenced by the young woman's composed approach and the constructive outcome of the confrontation. The atmosphere was more respectful, attentive, and mindful, demonstrating that thoughtful action could lead to meaningful change. The young woman, reflecting on the entire experience, felt empowered by her ability to navigate the situation effectively. She had demonstrated calm authority, ensured accountability, and contributed to positive change. Her composure had not only addressed the immediate incident, but had also influenced the behavior and awareness of others, leaving a lasting impact. In the end, both the young woman and the boutique manager had grown from the experience. The young woman had learned the power of patience, clarity, and dignity in confronting challenges, while the manager had learned the importance of accountability, respect, and thoughtful leadership. The incident became a story of growth, reflection, and positive change, illustrating how difficult moments could lead to meaningful lessons and transformation. The city continued its rhythm, unaware of the ripple effects of a single afternoon in the boutique. Yet within that space, lessons had been learned, behaviors had changed, and both the young woman and the manager had experienced growth. The young woman's calm authority had made a difference, showing that handling conflict with dignity, patience, and clarity could create positive outcomes. The boutique had become a place of respect and awareness, and both individuals had gained valuable insights into responsibility, accountability, and the power of thoughtful action.